Geronimo by Shepherd. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow. And have I broken a microphone or have I broken these headphones? Testing, 1, 2. No, it's definitely just me. These headphones, we've got some new headphones in the studio right now. I think these are Beyerdynamics. They're DT770 Pros, and it sounds like I'm in a bubble. I don't know if I'm ever going to get used to wearing these headphones. This is totally crazy. Oh my gosh, have I got a show lined up for you today? Over the Christmas period, I was speaking to I've been speaking to friends, I've been speaking to my dad, I've been speaking to neighbours, because they've been asking questions about different media storage techniques and digital media storage techniques, thumb drives, flash drives, hard drives, CDs, all that kind of thing. So I ended up doing a little bit of research, and some of the things I uncovered really got my imagination going a bit crazy, and I will be sharing some more of that later in the show over the next 2 hours, because I'll be here with you for the next 2 hours. Yes, that's right, another 2 hours. And I've got one more 2-hour show next week before things start rolling back to the 1-hour shows. I get to breathe. You get to preserve some of your eardrum capacity. Today is Sunday, the 7th of January, 2018. We have already been in the new year for a week, and this is the 7th day of the year. This means there are 350 days left until the end of the year, and just 352 days left until Christmas. Oh my gosh, on this day in 1797, the modern Italian flag was first used. In 1890, on this day, the African-American inventor William Purvis received a patent for the fountain pen. In 1929, the Buck Rogers sci-fi comic strip had its first appearance in a newspaper, and Tarzan, one of the first adventure comic strips, also debuted. In 1934, the Flash Gordon comic strip by Alex Raymond debuted, and in 1955, Marian Anderson became the first African-American to perform with the New York Metropolitan Opera. In 1980, the American President Jimmy Carter authorized legislation to bail out the Chrysler Corporation with a $1.5 billion loan. In 1990, the Tower of Pisa closed to the public after it started leaning too far. In 1991, Saddam Hussein prepared his troops for what he said would be a long and violent war against the US. In 1992, AT&T released their first video telephone for the very reasonable price of only $1,499. In 2001, the 27th People's Choice Awards winners were Mel Gibson and Julia Roberts for the dramatic motion picture. And in 2003, the single In Da Club was released by 50 Cent. And on this day, 15 years later, in 2018, White Shadow brought you a show loaded with fascinating facts, tantalizing topics, and mesmerizing music, just like this one right here. Ballroom Blitz by Tia Korea. I love that song. It's so much nostalgia. Before that, we were listening to Delilah by Tom Jones and I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow. And if you were tuning in earlier on, Patrick had his show for the past 2 hours up until 12 o'clock, and one of his friends, I believe it was Izzy, tweeted into the studio requesting a song, and Patrick misread this song. He misread it and thought it was a war on dogs, but it wasn't. It was war on drugs. And I was listening in, and I cannot shake the image in my head now of a Doberman armed with a machine gun, just like, full camouflage outfit, all of that. I can't shake that thought now. It's just crazy. This is a new year. This is a new age of technological evolution and an age that might one day be forgotten. See, you might think that all of your photos on Facebook and all of your tweets might last forever and maybe even come back to haunt you depending on what you've got out there, but in reality, a lot of our digital information is at risk of disappearing in the future because, unlike previous decades, these days no physical record exists for most of the digital material we own. I mean, CDs, for example, don't last more than a couple of decades, and archivists and archaeologists, so it turns out, are starting to get worried about this. To think that one day we might know less about the early 21st century than we do about the early 20th century is kind of weird. See, the early 20th century is still mostly based on things like paper and film that are still quite easily accessible, but most of what we're doing now, the things we're putting into the cloud, our digital content is born digital. It's not something that we've sort of translated from an analog source into a digital one. It was born as digital content, so it will disappear as digital content without any kind of analog counterpart. See, computer and data specialists refer to this era of lost data as the digital dark ages, and other experts are calling it the 21st century, the whole of the 21st century. They're calling it an informational black hole, because most of the digital information we're creating right now might not be readable by machines and other programs of the future. All that data, a whole century of digital history, is at risk of never being recoverable. And I'm sure you've already been there at some point yourselves. The game isn't compatible with a newer version of Windows. The music file isn't compatible with the programs that play MP3s. And some of the modern programs no longer support tagged image format files, which means that photos from that era are harder to view. Surprisingly, many of the world's largest companies and data-based enterprises still rely on an old-school storage method in the form of magnetic tape. This is a method that was introduced by IBM back in 1952. They introduced the first magnetic tape data storage system, which ushered into the modern era of computing. And some of the first tapes could hold around 2.3 megabytes per reel, but this method has come a long, long way. A single cartridge of today's magnetic tape can hold hundreds of terabytes of data, which is the equivalent of hundreds of millions of books. And last summer, IBM increased the amount a cartridge can hold to 330 terabytes, which is 330,000 gigabytes per cartridge. And big companies like Google and Fermilab all have massive libraries of tape with thousands and thousands of cartridges. I will be sharing more about this after I've knocked out a few more tunes, so keep listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. Rock Lobster by the B-52s. If that didn't make you tune out, I do not know what will. Before that, we were listening to Burning Down a House by Talking Heads and Feel It by the Tamperer, featuring Maya. Now, I might have forgotten to mention that I'm in a bit of a crazy mood today, and I thought I would put together a playlist that sort of dictates that. And you're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM, or not after that. I am White Shadow, and I've been talking about digital media storage. See, at the moment, most companies use digital technology for first-line storage, and magnetic tape is used as the sort of the backup to the backup, which can also present problems in the form of ever-changing magnetic formats and an issue known as bit rot, which means that over time the digital information on the tape and other digital formats like CDs can decay or degrade if it's not stored properly. And as I mentioned earlier, there's also the issue of software rot, in which the old files and games and other data become unusable because no format exists to read and reproduce the information. Different storage devices have different lifespans, like the magnetic media, like floppy disks, have a lifespan of about 3 to 5 years. Tapes only have a lifespan of about 10 to 14 years, which is very similar to CD and DVD storage. I think most hard disk drives, last between 3 and 5 years before components start to fail. This doesn't always mean that the drive is entirely busted, but 3 to 5 years is still about how long they last. Whether you're talking about internal or external, with all the moving parts inside the old school hard disk drive, all the moving parts do eventually stop working. There's also what's known as the flash storage, USB sticks, the SD cards, and the solid-state drives, the SSD drives. The flash drives can last up to sort of 10 years, but they don't usually degrade because of age. The more you delete and write new information to them, the more the memory will start to degrade. However, one thing I have learned about flash drives specifically is the better hardware will pay off. I mean, given the variety of manufacturers, lifespan can differ quite a bit from one device to another, but flash memory devices rated for more write cycles will usually last much, much longer. There is a relatively new technology known as the M-Disc. The M-Disc, it looks very similar to a DVD, but the old DVD uses a layer of dye that the data is burned into, which starts to degrade as soon as it's written onto. Whereas the new M-Disc uses an actual layer of rock-like materials that are known to last for centuries. The M-Disc literally engraves data into a rock-like layer that is resistant to extreme conditions of light, temperature and humidity, giving it a potential lifespan of 1,000 years. The DVD M-Disc can store the same 4.7 gigabytes of data as a standard DVD, and the Blu-ray M-Disc can store the same 25 gigabytes of data as a standard Blu-ray disc. But yeah, this sounds exciting, and already I bet some of you are asking, are these M-Discs compatible with the existing DVD players and Blu-ray drives? And to some extent, yes, they are. Your DVD and Blu-ray drives can read the new M-Discs just fine, but only certain drives are capable of writing to the M-Disc, and luckily finding out which ones are compatible and which ones are not is very, very easily done online, so there's no sweat there. But I guess the next question would be, how much does this new bit of miracle modern technology actually cost? And a pack of 10 M-Disc DVDs will probably set you back somewhere around £25, which works out around 55p per gigabyte of data. This is sounding good, but I already feel like I've been talking forever, so I am going to go into the kitchen. Let's do this. I was going to say I'm going to be by the Proclaimers, but I can't help but get the sneaking suspicion that might not have been the original that it claims to be on the system. I get this funny feeling that it might have been Peter Kay and Matt Lucas's re-record of it for the 2007 charity telethon. That's tickled me. That's made me chuckle. This has not distracted me. This has not thrown me off course at all. Before that, we were listening to "You'll Always Find Me in the Kitchen" by Jonah Louie and "Mr. Soft" by Steve Harley, featuring the Cockney Rebel. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow, and earlier on I was talking about the slightly modern-ish newer technology of the M-Disc. And I'm going to roll straight back into it. I'm going to pretend that song did not happen because it just makes me chuckle. It does. I love that song. I love the cover. There's quite an interesting story behind the M-Disc, because it was developed by Millenniata Incorporation, which was incorporated in 2010 over in Utah. And Millenniata Incorporation officially went bankrupt in December 2016. The CEO tried to manage this by issuing what's known as a convertible debt. That's pretty much when the intention of both the investors and the company is, to convert the debt into potentially more valuable equity at a later date. Now, when the obligation for conversion wasn't met, Millenniata Incorporation defaulted on the debt payments, and the debt holders took possession of all of the company assets. The debt holders very quickly started up a new company to continue selling M-Discs and related services for themselves. But I mean, beyond M-Discs, there is another modern age technology being developed as we speak. Something that was originally discussed as a possibility right back in 1964 in Russia, I believe. I can't remember much more than that. And this is what's known as DNA data storage. Yeah, DNA, which is like a billion-year-old molecule that can store the very essence of life itself. This technology uses artificial DNA made by using commercially available synthesis machines for storage and what they call a DNA sequencing machines for retrieval. And this DNA type of storage system is a lot more compact than current magnetic tape or hard drive storage, a lot more. Due to the data density of the DNA, the storage capacity is measured in petabytes, and a petabyte, by the way, is 1,000 terabytes, or a million gigabytes. Now, check this out. It's currently reported that 215 petabytes, that is 215 million gigabytes, could be stored in just 1 gram of DNA. And it also has the capability, quite obviously, for a very, very long lifespan indeed. As long as the DNA is held in cold, dry, dark conditions, it could last. It could last for as long as the woolly mammoth DNA that's still being studied from around 60,000 years ago. Consider that. Just consider that. This method of data storage could literally be considered apocalypse-proof. Because, even after a hypothetical global disaster, future generations might eventually find these stores and still be able to read them. That's just wow. And I was going to ramble on and continue with this, but I've still got Matt Lucas in my head right now, so I'm going to see if I can put on something a little more sort of let's just throw this on. Stay tuned to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I will be right back after this.
Calling all the monsters, calling all the monsters, calling all.
Baggy Trousers by Madness. Before that, we were listening to Calling All the Monsters by China Ann McClain, potentially the most normal song of the show so far, and Groove is in the Heart by D-Light. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow, and I've been talking about digital media storage in both capacity limits and general lifespan, and in the last link I was talking specifically about DNA data storage, and the 215 million gigabytes of data could be stored on 1 gram of synthetic DNA, which, when stored in the right conditions, could hit lifespans of like 6,000 years. 60,000 years. Woolly mammoths, I don't think woolly mammoths were around 6,000. I think we're talking more 60,000 years ago. DNA has that kind of lifespan. Under the right conditions. In March 2017, Dr. Yaniv Ehrlich and Dina Zelinsky of Columbia University and the New York Genome Center published a method known as a DNA fountain, which allows perfect retrieval of information from the DNA. Using this method, they were able to perfectly retrieve an operating system called Calibrios, an entire French movie, a $50 Amazon gift card, and a computer virus, a Pioneer plaque, and a study by Claude Shannon. Now, the method is definitely not ready for large-scale use just yet, as it costs around £6,000 to synthesize 2 megabytes of data and another £1,500 to read it again. So, as things currently stand, it would cost you around £18,000 to store one song and around £4,500 to retrieve it again. So, the method is definitely, for now, it's intended for using with a low access rate, such as historical archiving of large amounts of scientific data or something like that. But technically, this means that they could store every bit of data ever recorded by humans in the whole of mankind throughout all of the ages. They could store every bit of data we've ever recorded in the whole of mankind in a container about the size and weight of a couple of pickup trucks. That is pretty insane, isn't it? That is pretty insane. But how much further could digital media storage actually go? There is another aspect of DNA. See, all of this has got me thinking. All of this, while I was researching all of this, while I was finding all of this out, there was something that crossed my mind. And my like I said at the start of the show, my imagination just went totally wild. See, there's another aspect of DNA storage as I haven't touched base with just yet. Because DNA is biological, it can be stored and preserved inside an organism, a living being. I could keep this scientific and graceful, but I'm really not going to. This means that one day you might actually be able to store all of your photos, all of your music, all of your emails, your essays, your holiday videos, your entire 4K movie collection, and all of your box sets. You could potentially store all of this in you. I mean, just the concept is almost scarily overwhelming, isn't it? Once again, I'm talking way too much. I'm going to put on a bit more music because at the moment I have way too much rabbit.
Rabbit. rabbit, 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 rabbit.
On for tonight, on for tonight, on for tonight.
Chandelier by Sire. Before that, we had the Rockin' Rabbit by Chaz and Dave and Poker Face by Lady Gaga, because I am gonna keep them tunes mixed up big time. Yes, sirree. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow, and I've been talking about digital media storage, you know, the capacity limits, general lifespan, and in the last link I was talking about DNA data storage, and I dropped the gaspy point, the theory that the theory that DNA, because it is biological, synthetic, well, this is synthetic DNA, but DNA is still biological, so it can, in theory, be stored inside a living organism. It can be stored inside a person. And one day, technology might evolve enough that you could store and retrieve this DNA-saved data on the fly. And, while you're out and about, one day, there might be a device, probably the size of a smartphone, because everything nowadays seems to be the size of a smartphone, everything except a smartphone, ironically, that will allow you to take, a photo. It'll be stored straight into as a single gram of synthetic data that already stores all of your holiday photos and half of your movies and probably goodness knows what else is probably don't want to know, which could then be implanted by the device into your body for you to retrieve whenever you like. Just imagine how amazing it would be if you could literally become a walking photo album, a walking movie library. You could carry around as much music as the world has to offer with nothing more than a gram or two of extra weight added to you. But then this would also raise so many other questions too. I mean, should we assume this DNA data storage would be contained to one spot of your body, or would it become a part of your entire body's DNA? If it does become a part of your entire body's DNA, this raises so many more questions too. Does this mean the data could be easily stolen or even involuntarily distributed by something as simple as a cough or a sneeze? Would we eventually see people swabbing forks and spoons, toilet seats and door handles, hoping to steal thousands of pounds worth of movies and maybe even personal data before it's destroyed by adverse, conditions? Could a virus or a bacterial infection cause the DNA data to be altered, destroyed, or even triggered into an inactive state? Which is one of the most common things that bacterial infections and viruses can do to DNA. And would it only take a common cold to destroy or lose all of your personal files forever? Could something as simple as a kiss be enough to share all of your files with somebody else? And would that mean you also have theirs? I mean, there would be so many questions, and I definitely have a few more. But again, I feel like I've been talking forever. It's been just over 3 minutes. 3 minutes of me talking is more than enough for anybody. So let's throw on a few more tunes. We have Every Morning by Sugar Ray. Stick around. A Man for All Seasons by Robbie Williams. Before that, we were listening to Every Morning by Sugar Ray and Ain't No Rest for the Wicked by Cage the Elephant. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow, and over the past hour and a half now, I have been talking about digital media storage, and in the last few links, I have been talking about the current research into DNA data storage. And in the last link specifically, I was talking about DNA data storage and the prospects of if it could be stored inside an organism, which is theoretically possible, if it could be stored inside yourself. And that raised so many other questions, because things like colds and viruses and being able to swab, door handles and forks and even toilet seats, could that potentially, transmit the data to somebody else? Could they have access to all of your things that you store with it? There's just so many questions, so many things to blow the mind. And because of this, I think if DNA data storage stored within yourself was to become a thing of the future, it would have to be contained to one area of the body to prevent it from just being, taken by anybody else under so many different circumstances, from kissing to coughing to sneezing to leaving a dirty fork at the restaurant. And if it was to become, it would always be public if it was part of your entire body's DNA. So it would have to be contained to one area of the body somehow. And unless, of course, this DNA stored data came in some kind of zip form, like a password protected folder or something. But then, since you could physically uncover every sequence of the DNA, the password protection couldn't hide the data. So, the only other method would be some form of encryption, but we couldn't have a different form of encryption for every being in existence. But at least I'm sure we couldn't. Some of them would have to be so similar that they would be easily decipherable. I mean, I feel like I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself. Granted, this is something I probably don't need to worry about in my lifetime, but in 500 years from now, when this is close enough to be in our line of sight, I can say I was there discussing it first, long before the people. And people of the future could listen into this very show and get my take on it. And I mean, assuming, of course, that this show is properly stored on a medium that can last for 500 years. Where did I put that floppy disk?
Don't put the blame on me. Don't put your blame on me.
Human by Rag and Bone Man. Before that, we were listening to Turn Down for What by DJ Snake and Lil Jon, and Sail by AWOL Nation. You're listening to Insanity Radio 103.2 FM. I am White Shadow, and I totally forgot. I missed my cue once again. I was busy singing along to the music. I was busy bopping away, and I totally forgot about the bit where I have to actually use a microphone. Now, through over the past hour and 45 minutes, I have been talking about digital media storage. I have been talking about lifespans, and things may or may not have started getting a little bit crazy towards the end there when I started thinking about and talking about the future of DNA data storage potentially being stored inside an organism for the sake of the show ourselves, and some of the prospects that would entail. And it's been a crazy show. My imagination has definitely been creeping ahead. Is it my imagination, or am I seeing into the future? Am I seeing something that 500 years from now? I mean, 500 years from now, there could be people like that. I mean, I'm assuming we probably won't be there in 500 years, depending on how much medical science progresses over the next 30 years, let's say. But I mean, one day somebody might be sat in there, just like back in them there good old days when I was a wee whippersnapper, we had to rely on primitive technology called the cloud to store our data. So what are you not complaining about? We had to wait 15 seconds for our music to be uploaded. And it's a crazy thought. It's kind of scary. And I mean, again, if it does end up with DNA data storage becoming a viable option one day, if there is ever some kind of apocalyptic global catastrophe and half of the Earth does end up being wiped out, and somebody does end up finding this DNA data and being able to read it in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years from now, I imagine they'll be there like, I be finding myself some shiny treasure. And it's a crazy thought, isn't it? It's a crazy thought when you think about the fact that 20, 25, 30 years ago, we were on floppy disks, and just 15, 20 years ago, CDs were becoming a thing, and we were saying back in them there good old days, we had to rely on floppy disks instead of these modern CD mumbo jumbo things. And now it's already moved on to digital. It's moved on to the cloud. It's moved on to Just so many different things. The USB, I mean, SSD, flash drives still confuse me. I still have no idea how USB drives and solid state drives work. I have no idea whatsoever. I have always been used to sort of magnetic sources like floppy disks or the hard drives with the the hard disk drives with the mechanical parts moving around, picking up the data. I still can't even begin to comprehend how things like flash drives work. And I mean, the DNA data, it's just way over my head. But it has been fun thinking about it. It has been fun, definitely. And I mean, yeah, I'm okay. I'm already at that stage where I am just rambling now. I've come to the ramble stage of my show, just like I do at the end of every one of my shows nowadays. Yeah, I'm completely lost for words. I am going to call it a day. I'm going to start drifting off out of here. Don't forget, I will be here again next week from 12 till 2 for another 2 hours. 2 hours. How my throat was going. That was a toady hour. And every single hour that I've ever done on this show has been toady. It has been questionable. I'm thinking. I remember once I told my dad that I had got myself a role at Insanity as a presenter, and he looked at me with a big grin and he said, "What would you talk about on radio?" I think I must be about 45 hours worth of shows so far, and I am still talking. I still have not stopped, even when I'm talking total gibberish. In fact, thinking about it, I think this is the first show I have ever done when I haven't had a word that I've tripped over. I think I have said, I could be wrong, I'd have to listen back to find out, but I'm pretty sure I have said every single word in English. That's kind of scary. I would say I'm almost nearly getting good at this, but I did miss my cue because I was too busy bopping away to Human by Rag and Bone Man. But anyway, I'm going to call it a day. Don't forget to tune in next week between 12 and 2 for more of me. But stay tuned anyway, because it's Insanity Radio 103.2 FM, and this is the best radio station in the universe because I said so. I'm going to tune out of here. Enjoy the rest of your day. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, people of all ages, let's get ready to rumble.
Let's get ready.